Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Morris again, and welcome back to my channel. I hope that you guys are doing well, especially during this, COVID-19 situation. But nonetheless, I hope that you guys are at least having fun with Cardfight Vanguard Zero. This video's topic is going to be really straightforward. I would like to talk about chain rides in Cardfight Vanguard Zero. Now, chain rides is definitely not a new topic for Cardfight veterans, both in the physical game as well as in the digital version. But my purpose is not to talk about like how to play the chain rides, but rather my personal opinion based on years of experience on what would be a good chain ride. Like, of the existing chain rides, which ones would I be consider better than the others? So to just get things out of the way, let's just get some basic premise down. But first, what is a chain ride? A chain ride is a card combo mechanic that requires the player to ride a specific card in a specific sequence. And if you successfully do so, let's say from grade 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 of specific cards, if you successfully complete the combo, you will get some kind of reward, sometimes in the form of a permanent power boost to the Vanguard or drawing a card, maybe both, maybe something else. So in this case, for example, I got the physical copies of the Stern Blau Guger, the starter of Blau Younger. We've got the great one, which is Blau Panzer. The second one is Blau Kruger. And of course the grade 3, which is Stern Blau Kruger. So if you happen to have 4 of these, this is basically a combo set. But that is pretty much the premise of what is a chain ride. There we go. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that little distraction right there. Still, the cards are back safely. What was I talking about? We were talking about chain rides, and I mentioned before that there are basically 3 tiers that I would like to talk about. Tier 1 being the better form of chain rides, followed by tier 2, and then tier 3, which is to be the least efficient. Now, please note, even though I'd said least efficient doesn't make them like particularly bad compared to tier 1 or tier 2. If those work for you, by all means continue running it. All I'm saying is that the efficiency or effective rate of actually triggering off may not be as good in your perspective, or maybe perhaps in my opinion, may not be as good as compared to tier 2 or tier 1. So with that said, let's talk about tier 3 chain rides. So in tier 3 chain rides, I'm pretty sure that you have already been familiar with it at the very start with set 1, and that is with Kagero. Now in Kagero, you are given to kind of like a chain ride system, and that is pretty much, if we look into the list real quickly, that would be Blazing Flag Dragon's chain ride, as well as Embodiment of Victory Elf's chain ride. Both of their system is pretty much the same. You need to have your starter, which is the grade 0 in this case for Embodiment of Victory Elves. You need to have the embodiment of a Sphere Tar as your starter, followed by the embodiment of Armor Bar as a rear guard, and then your grade 2, which is the Dragon Knight Elf, must be as the Vanguard the Vanguard Circle, and then you activate Elf skill in order to absorb everyone else, which is Bar and Tar, into the soul, and then search your deck for 1 copy of Embodiment of Victory Elf, and then ride it on top of Dragon Knight Elf, all on the same turn. In a sense, you essentially lost 1 card, but on the other hand, you potentially have saved yourself 1 or even 2 rounds, assuming, or rather notably on who started the turn. If it's your turn first, if you start the match first, then that means that you would actually basically have 2 rounds ahead of your opponent, because you will be at grade 3, your opponent will be at grade 1. But if your opponent starts first, then you will be at grade 3, he or she will be at grade 2. And then that's pretty much it. That is pretty much the basis of tier 3 chain rides. There is one other chain ride considered also as tier 3 as well, which was also recently introduced during a special event, the Grand Blue event, in fact, of course, the Grand Blue clan, and that would be in fact Spirit Exceed. Now Spirit Exceeds how it does is a bit different, yeah, in which case it requires you to search for Spirit Exceed and then discard it into the drop zone. Then you need to have both its starter, which is Night Spirit, as well as its Great One, which is Samurai Spirit, on the field, and then you can put any random Great 2 as its Vanguard, and then Superior Call, or rather Superior Right Spirit Exit into the Vanguard circle. Positive side about this is that you draw a card. But on the other hand, in order to effectively get Spirit Exceed into the drop zone, you have to hope for a pretty good starting hand, which ideally are cards with special skills that allows you to discard cards. But ideally, you would want to have Chappie the Ghosty in order to specifically find and drop Spirit Exceed into the drop zone. Now, why do I consider these 3 chain rides as tier 3 as probably the least effective ones, the most costly of all chain rides? That's because you essentially have to put down and potentially put your Grade Zero at risk of actually getting retired, mostly by Kagero, or you also run through the risk of not being able to get Grade 1 or even a Grade 2 into your hand in order to properly Superior Ride. And even in that process, you would have lost 1 additional card from your hand because you have to put down another card which actually gets absorbed in, therefore rendering your playing field empty. Your Grade 1 booster is gone into the soul. Your Grade 0 starter, which could potentially be a booster, also gone right into the soul, and your hand would have suffered if you had not had any great luck with the draw triggers that might somehow repopulate or maintain your hand size. So that is why I'd say that these tier 3 chain rides are not in its most ideal form as one would like to be. But at the start with the set 1 release, it is definitely a pretty good way to start things off because there really isn't any other chain rides to use. So that is in fact the tier 3 chain rides. Now, before we move on to tier 2, you may be wondering, wait, Morris, you forgot one more chain ride. And you may be right. That could be what you might be thinking of would be Royal Paladin, and that would possibly be referring to Barcgal. Now, the reason why I would not consider this as a chain ride in any shape or form, because all it does is Superior Ride, blast the blade onto your field, and then boom, that's it. That is the end of the line. It does not go into Grade 3. And not to mention, it is a pretty costly move because you're essentially wasting away 2 triggers just so you can ensure that Blaster Blade goes into the Vanguard circle. Now, naturally, this kind of structure will be very important to have in the future, involving Majesty Lord Blaster and all that wonderful good stuff. So it is by no means particularly bad, but in this current situation right now, it's not why I would consider it to be a great move yet. But when Majesty Lord Blaster comes out, it changes the whole perspective, the whole value of Barcgal and all that stuff. So that is why, in my humble opinion, Barcgal and its superior riding of Blaster Blade does not count in any shape or form as a chain ride. Next, we're going to talk about Tier 2. Now, Tier 2 is when Set 2 and Set 3, this month's release. Going back to Kagero, now Set 2 in this case, we'll be looking at Ember Eclipse Dragon. Ember Dragon Eclipse. Sorry about that. Now, the chain ride for this is very similar to what is used for a Nova Grappler, which is its Sternblood Cougar series, as well as a Dimension Police for its Agni Men Storm series. The series goes with, if we actually look into Grade 0, which will be this guy, you need to have it started again. At the start of the turn, of your turn, you need to already have Ember Dragon Daylight in your hand to actually ride right on top of it. Now, the good news about the benefit of this is that if you're successfully doing so, you get Ember Dragon Dusk, a Grade 2, into your hand. That means an extra card, it filters your deck, and it essentially puts a non-trigger into your hand, which is a pretty good way to go about it. Ember Dragon Daylight, once again, if it actually rides on top of Dawn, it gets an additional 2000 power as the Vanguard. There's a pro and con with this card. Now, if you notice, its power is at 6000. Not a great booster. but it is still, at the very least, a subpar booster, a decent booster, if you will. 6,000, better than 5,000 or 4,000, if that, in any case. But it does have an extra added skill, likewise, which is also replicated for both the Sternblau Guger series and the Dimensional Police series, is that if you put this card as a rear guard circle, you can discard a grade 3, which search for it directly and put into your hand, which again, it is also a good way to filter your deck and look for a card that you specifically need, which is very precise, very cool. But other than that, if it has no effect, if you write any other grade 1 on top of your grade 0 starter, your chain ride is broken. Unless you manage to get grade 2, which is, in this case, would have been Ember Dragon Dusk. Let's say you forgot, or rather, let's say you could not get grade 1, the grade 1 into the entire chain. Hope is not lost yet. You could still try to hope that your starting hand or your subsequent turns, you manage to get Dusk into your hand, and you also manage to get Eclipse into your hand. Then at the very least, when you ride Ember Dragon Dusk, and then followed by the next turn, which is Eclipse, Eclipse would already have the added bonus of 1,000 power, which if I just scroll over here again one more time, as you can see here, if Ember Dragon Dusk is in your soul, it gets 1,000 power. Its base power becomes 11k throughout the entire game, even on your turn, which is pretty good. Having an 11k base power is really wonderful in terms of defensive as well as attacking as well. If your opponent is at 10k, you can easily try to attack it without the need of boosters. But your opponent, if he doesn't put out any grade 1 boosters, which essentially is -1 card from his hand, so one way or the other, it's still a pretty good deal. But this all comes down to you being able to get the cards into your hand, your grade 1s. And if you couldn't get your grade 1s, you have to hope that you get your grade 2s. And you also want to wish that you have a grade 3 as well. Otherwise, your grade 3 would just become a 10k base power. So this also means that there is always a chance that if your starting hand, you don't have the grade 1 you don't have any of the chain rides at all, and you mulligan the whole hand and you still don't get it, and the cards you keep drawing isn't coming out, that means your chain ride is completely failed. That's why I consider tier 2 as it is. The Sternblau Guger deck, the Eclipse, the Ember series, as well as the Element Storm series. They are definitely decent, but they do not exactly trigger off very frequently, if you will. So that's tier 2. Now, we're gonna be talking about tier 1. In my humble opinion, possibly the best chain ride that you could go for, because they cycle through the deck to search for the cards and then ride it automatically. One of the iconic characters in Oracle Think Tank will be Goddess of the Full Moon Tsukuyomi. She has been well known to be a force to be reckoned with during the old days with the physical card game itself, and even after Limit Break, even during Limit Break, it still proved to be quite a terrifying force to reckon with. Tsukuyomi, as well as the other Royal Paladin one, which is known as the Galahad Chain Ride, they have this incredible mechanic. If we go over to grade 0 immediately, in the case for Oracle Think Tank or Tsukuyomi Chain Ride, it's grade 0 Godhawk Ichibiyoshi. At the start of your right phase game, or rather this card's effect will automatically trigger that it will check the first 5 cards. If it's got the grade 1, which is Goddess of the Crescent Moon Tsukuyomi, it automatically rides it. So that means you could potentially still retain your starting hand of 6 or 7 cards, because again, at the start of your turn, you draw a card. If it's your, you get what I'm talking about. So if at the first 5 cards it checks, it has the grade 1, it automatically rides it, saving your hand, maintaining that hand size. If your hand doesn't have the grade 1 and it manages to check the 5 cards and it has that, it's also good for you too. And not to mention, consider this, if your starting hand, even after mulliganing, you did not get the grade 1, you have a better chance of triggering and getting the grade 1, a more frequency of getting the grade 1 into your into motion than compared to the other tier 2, tier 3 chain rides. My mind died. So that makes it incredibly powerful, but this doesn't just stick to just grade 0. Even grade 1 as well, it has the same skill. Likewise, it will search for the top 5 cards again, and it will search for the grade 2, and likewise the grade 2 will do the same thing. There we go, it will search the top 5 again, and if that's the grade 3 itself, boom, Tsukuyomi right into that. So assuming in the best situation, you did not write any cards from your hand, and you did not call any cards out onto the rear guard field. For 3 turns, you would have drawn 3 cards, therefore adding your hand to potentially to 8 or even 9 cards. That's almost a full hand without you even writing a single card from your hand. That is huge. That kind of hand advantage is enormous, and that applies the same thing for the Galahad Chain Ride as well, which is also why, just in terms of hand size alone, this makes, in my humble opinion, the Tsukuyomi Chain Ride and the Galahad Chain Ride superior in terms of frequency and efficiency to tier 2 or tier 3 chain rides. However, there's always pros and cons, but the cons in Tsukuyomi or in the tier 1 chain rides are so minimal or almost non-existent that it is a no-brainer to try to go for these chain rides. If not for the fact that Tsukuyomi is a freaking triple rare. So I can definitely understand why there will be a good number of people who will go for Galahad, because the Galahad is a double rare, noticeably easier to get. So there we go. That is my thoughts of the current state of chain rides, tier 1 to tier 3. To hear your thoughts about it. As far as I know, just my personal thought, I'm a big fan of Sturmblau. You know, being able to actually build that chain ride is a wonderful, wonderful experience. Just harkens back into the good days of playing the physical card itself. So I really, really greatly enjoyed that. So I hope this video has been educational, informational to you guys. I am by no means advocating that everyone should get Tsukuyomi Chain Ride, everyone should get Galahad. No, I still stand on the point is that at the end of the day, try your best to enjoy the game as it is. You know, like you might be tempted to buy extra packs, like after you finish opening up all your free packs and like, oh man, I'm still missing out some cards for the Tsukuyomi Chain Ride and stuff like that. And you might be tempted to put down actual money into the game. As much as I would like to tell you to continue to financially, fiscally support the game itself, I will also say try to build a decks within your means. Try to challenge yourself. Come up with your own strategies to build it. A tip that I've also received is that you could possibly try to utilize the chain rides of both Tsukuyomi and or Galahad. And then if you don't have any of the grade 3s, it's totally fine because you still manage to ride them up, because the grade 1s and the grade 2s of both chain rides are rare. You can easily craft those. Double rares and triple rares are significantly more difficult to craft, but rares, they're easy to craft, no problem. So make use of that, and then conveniently get to grade 3, get to grade 2, and then you can pull on any grade 3s that you want. The benefit with that, Tsukuyomi and Galahad, at the very least until grade 2, has managed to soul charge some cards into it, so you would already have at least 4 souls by the time you put down in grade 3, which can be very useful for cards like, for example, Lohan Green. Significantly lesser time to activate its Mega Blast and all that wonderful good stuff, or Oracle Think Tank in the case of CU Amaterasu, you know, much lesser time to activate her Mega Blast as well. So there's a lot of things I think that you can definitely go about it. By no means the chain rides are absolutely, you know, omnipotent. I hope that this video has been helpful. I hope it has been great. I will be recording another video later regarding about the latest info, an announcement by Game Studio regarding about some changes that they have did to some cards. So do look forward to that. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you find it well. If you've got any comments, any suggestions, any feedback for what I've just shared, don't be afraid to, or rather don't be shy to share them in the comments below this video and all that wonderful good stuff. At the same time, quick reminder, I do a stream from time to time as frequently as I can, and I invite you guys to join me to join in the chat, you know, have fun with me, chat with me, maybe even engage with me with some friend fights from time to time. But at the same time, I love to discuss with you guys on strategies. Maybe you guys can watch me flounder and struggle around with my my subpar decks. Yeah. Once again, if you like this video, like, subscribe, whichever it is. Your support, your encouragement, your interest is a huge motivation to me to do all these things. So yeah, so with that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Ciao.